Let me get into wrestling real quick, Jr. Have you been watching WWE?
Yeah.
Okay. What, from your point of view, what do you think is the problem there? Because I'm not excited for this WrestleMania, which they always would do a great job of. There's nothing that really stands out to me that I'm interested in except the women's match. They seem to have thrown everything together at the last second. Go down the lineup and you'll see what I'm talking about. No real long feuds. Disco always makes a very good point that they do a better job of burying people than getting people over. I mean, they wrote the book on how to make stars. They wrote the book, on how to, present somebody via vignettes. I mean, they were the gold standard. What has happened there, or what is happening there? Is the product too big, and what's going on, do you think?
I think they're having to reinvent themselves too frequently because of their growth and all the obligations they have internally. I've been kind of estranged from that. I've been under contract the last 2 years, I'm happy to say, and got paid an awful lot of money to do nothing, which is, right. Some people say, well, that's a great deal.
Right.
It's not a great deal if you're a widower and you're living in an empty house.
Right.
Sitting home drawing your check ain't that big a deal.
Right.
That's just me.
Right.
Now, if I hadn't had some money coming before I got to the game, I might be having to sing a different tune, but that's not the way it is. So I haven't been around them much, but I can tell you that what I see, the growth is overwhelming. I think that they've deviated with some of the basic principles that they built their brand around, especially at WrestleMania, for example. WrestleMania used to be a show where you always had a good, long, arcing story, a main event story that concluded at WrestleMania.
Right.
So you got a blow off, or maybe more than one blow off. You also got a first. And and I'm with you. The only thing that has turned me on about this show, other than the spectacle of it, I'm anxious to see what it's going to look like outside again, is the women's match. And now the drama is over. We know it's going to close the show. I mentioned this on Twitter this week. I wonder how many of the guys are going to look at that. They're going to say all the right things politically, but they got played, man. They got their ass kicked. So all these guys in the roster that are having the same match, going in the same finishing sequence, that haven't changed shit since they started, it's coming back to haunt them because these women are trying to reinvent themselves. They're more hungry to me. So I'm with you on that, Carlos. I think
they are more hungry. That is exactly correct. They are more hungry. Here's our chance. Here's our chance to show and prove, and that's what they're going out there and doing. Go ahead,
Jared. I'm glad you said that. Because, I say things outside the box and, what I think is kind of obvious, and people get on to me for it. But, in the big picture, like I said all along, these guys let the girls take their spots. And, in this macho culture that still kind of exists in professional wrestling, I'm surprised they let that happen with kind of almost without a fight. And I just want to ask you, bro, it's well, is this, we're the women are all over the show, and their main event in WrestleMania, and it's a good story to tell the world. But in your opinion, bro, is it really good for business like this going forward?
Doesn't bother me a bit. I'm a big equality guy. I have all my background would lend to being more narrow-minded and old school to the point of being distasteful. Because I saw how the women were treated back in the territory days. I saw it with my own eyes. I witnessed it. They were treated like shit by the guys on the roster because when you would book 4 moolah girls, for example, that meant 4 of the guys that were on your roster were set down while the women were there. So then the other guys were pissed at the women for taking paydays from 4 of the men because that was the only option those guys had, their only source of income. So they had heat from day one, and that's why they dressed in closets and got their clothes urinated on and everything else in the world because the guys are jealous and insecure, I guess is a good word. So I think that the brand has grown so much. Vince has got to really evaluate who all he has around him. Sometimes you can get too many cooks in the kitchen. That might be the case there too. But I can tell you in a real short answer, one of the issues they have is that they do too much short-term planning. And when you got that big a machine and you get big tentpole events like WrestleMania is, those should be pretty well planned out months and months in advance. And they, quite frankly, they used to be. the top 3 or 4 matches always are penciled in at least, so you had a direction, and that was your GPS. And that GPS helped everybody succeed.
It's almost like they're running around rudderless, and it's just crazy to me to see that. I'm very disinterested in this WrestleMania, except for the women's match. And going back to your point, thank God, the women have injected some freshness into the business. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
you hope that they motivate the guys to try a few different things. You can the predictability facet of our business is not a good thing. It's not good for any of us. And I can tell you this: the talent, the male talents, for example, that we're talking about, are making so much money that they found their comfort zone. And if you ask any highly trained sales manager or executive, the last thing you want for your troops is for them to reside in their comfort zone, because when they do, they stop growing and experimenting and trying different things. They stop growing, in other words.
Right.
And I think that's what we got there. Hey, there's some cats that are making 7 figures that haven't grown a house yet.
Bro, that's correct, because that's what happens. You get money, you rest on your laurels, you become complacent. Because even like if you look before in sports, back in the day, there were guys that just on principle alone wouldn't go to another team. That doesn't happen anymore. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Back then, yeah, they were fighting. Nobody was shaking hands and going out to dinner and taking selfies, in the off season. Like, you didn't like each other because you were hungry and you wanted to be number one and you wanted to get paid. And that there could be a lot of validity in that point.
I just think that it's not that you want to keep guys hungry, literally.
Yeah.
Hungry, but you want them to be
competitively.
Well, yeah, and you want, as a as a management team, or as a booker, or as an agent, or a producer, whatever the fancy names are for the guys in suits that are backstage, they got to continue to find new ways to motivate their talent and bring new things to the equation.
Right.
There's too much sameness. There's too much repetitive sequencing. Nobody's thinking outside the box. They do their same memorized match, and whether their shit is getting over or not, they're going to come hell or high water. They're going to get their stuff in as the match has been memorized. And that is absolutely, that's like, some of those guys I'm sure even think that doing memorized promos is a good thing, because they ain't got to think of nothing. So, that's thing.
Yes, but bro, you're repeating a lot of stuff I've said. Is like, I think, because here's the thing, is that the wrestling media is as much involved in the state of the wrestling business as anything else, because they drive narratives, and they keep telling us that we're in this period of, like, we have this unbelievable talent. And so whenever WWE isn't doing well, they always seem to put the blame on the creative. Like, it's all the creative's fault that these guys are just down. But for what you said, you repeat everything I've been saying, is that the work or the lack of creativity in the work has as much to do with it as anything else. And it's like, a lot of people kind of ignore that. And I'm like, I'm watching the matches. I see the same stuff as you. Bro, last pay-per-view, they had like a 3-way dance, a 4-way dance, all these things. Every single match looked like it was a continuation of the match before, just spot after spot after spot after spot after spot after spot after spot, with literally no drama or storytelling or nothing. We went and watched. We watch old matches and we do watch-alongs, right? We watched a 3-way dance yesterday between who was it? Conan,
Benoit, DDP, and Raven.
Benoit, DDP, and Raven from a WCW pay-per-view. Bro, there was a 15-minute match that there wasn't a high spot. It was just storytelling throughout the whole thing. Like, everything they were doing told a story until the final, the finish, And it's like, I think these guys think these spots is telling stories, but in the big picture, it's like, dude, everybody's doing these spots 50 times a show. It's not storytelling, And I'm like, that's what I see. Do you see the same thing?
Well, first of all, I'm very scared that I have the same opinion you do on anything.
Well, we're old school.
God, man. Carlos, what the hell's happening? What's going on here? Jesus Christ, I'm about high. Hey, I think that the comfort zone's a big issue, man. I think the fact that a lot of guys know that they're in the big time, under the big top, via some level of smoke and mirrors. And if they don't keep moving and doing acrobatics and the holy shit stuff, they're going to expose themselves, because they can't work. They can't work a hold or understand how holds work, or why you can leverage them and you can tell a story. You give your announcers something to hang their hat on, instead of saying, "Oh my God, did you see that? Oh my, God!" It's like it's the same voiceover you'd use in a porn. Oh, wow, it's crazy. It's not sports commentary. It's vaudeville, and I'm not a big fan of vaudeville these days in wrestling.